so let's talk about sleep. Again, I hope this isn't a triggering subject for some of you in that you didn't get much of it last night or the night before or just recently. So we're going to have some fun. Some of you have seen, actually, I would say many of you have seen this first, excuse me, go, yeah. Many of you have seen this first activity. Before we do, I wanted to share a PSA that a student made. You know how we're talking about PSAs. Many of the videos I've shown you have been PSAs over the course of the semester. And so there aren't really many sleep PSAs, as far as I'm aware. Like, there's no sleep organization that isn't, like, run by mattress companies. So, yeah, there's no, like, American Association of Sleepy Time Doctors. So, well, I'm sure there is an association for sleep doctors, but, so this is a guy who made a PSA, and then I found it on YouTube. Very funny. It replaces the other one, another student one, video that I had shared a little while ago.
I get like 5 hours of sleep a night. After I finish my homework, I usually watch TV on my laptop before I pass out. That's usually
Sound like you?
Before midnight. Go in.
Do not chug steaming hot coffee.
Yeah, I gotta get my coffee. If I don't have it, I'm a zombie. Like today. I didn't have my second cup during lunch. So yeah, third block was rough.
Those old school Macs. iMacs. Not old school, but older. As I have coffee right here.
Tired.
Yeah.
All day.
Do better next time.
Yeah, my grades would...
Anybody else write Fs like that?
Definitely. On top of being a zombie all day and getting bad grades, I also am just more angry a lot of the time. Even just the littlest thing ticks me off.
That's probably the most pathetic thing.
Would my life be better if I got more sleep? Yes. Yep. Yeah. I should really start getting more sleep.
Well done. Well acted. Let's give this guy a round of applause. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Woo! Okay. So, yeah, that's a good PSA about getting more sleep, right? So, many of you have seen this before, but of course I want to get your now. Okay? So, again, yes or a no to these questions. You give yourself a 1 for yes and a 0 for a no, and then you add up all of your yeses, essentially. I'm not going to go through all of the blocks, because many of you have been in a class where I've actually talked about this sleep activity, like 101 or another class where I talk about sleep. But think about more recently when you answer these questions. I know that... these questions are more broadly, but whether or not you can think about more recently, especially all things considered. you know. So these are the first 10, and I believe there are a few more coming up. Mm-hmm. And Katie, thanks for that. From last semester, your surveyed students from your research methods project get us 6.62 hours of sleep per night on average. Yep, that's not great. It's not great. I mean, we'll go through that. We'll go through that and apply it to. Of course, we're going through this as it pertains to health psychology, of course. I gotta say, as far as healthy behaviors go, because we're in healthy behavior mode right now. It's the part of the course where we're talking about like literal behaviors, and we're going to talk about addiction, exercise, nutrition, eating, and we're going to talk about addiction, and then all of the various drug use categories that we were going to talk about, aside from opiates and opioids. So we're in the behaviors portion of the class, and I would say, I like to start with sleep, because I would say a lot of health behaviors stem from whether or not you get good sleep. Okay, it's really going to impact it. It's definitely going to impact your mental health, because that's what sleep is needed for. Good, healthy, functioning brain. And so if you don't have a good, healthy, functioning brain, then other behaviors are going to fall by the wayside. So I like to start with sleep in this mode, in this class, because it is by far some of the most important pieces of information out there. Okay, so anybody need the first 10 anymore? Can I move on? Just say in chat whether or not you need me to stay. Excuse me. Of course, when I get started talking while I'm sitting, I get all burpy. It's really annoying. Really annoying. All right, so here is 11 through 17. So there's a total of 17. All right, and then when you are done answering the questions and adding up your 0 through 17 score, just put it up in chat. Just put it up in chat. We'll see how you fare, or have been faring the last few weeks, several months or so. Something like that. What do you think? Oh. Zombie plays games. That's an interesting emote there. 10 for Courtney. Not bad, not bad, not bad. Like I said, I'm not gonna 16, 7, 9, 6. Okay. Alright. Alright, 9. Oh, Peyton! Peyton, you laugh, but it makes me sad. Okay, alright. So it's looking like... Oh, Abby. Oh, no. It's looking like an average of 10. Allison, you calculate it just by adding up your yeses. So 0 for no, 1 for yes. I'll go, since many of you are done. So I will say scores above 9 for all of you who are putting... Ooh, Kat. Ooh, Sarah. For those of you who are putting scores above 9, I'll say... so this scale is measuring an aspect of your sleep behavior called sleep debt. Okay, and sleep debt you can think of as a related concept to sleep deprivation. Okay, and it's a cumulative aspect. Okay. Yeah, we definitely need to get more than 3 hours per night there, Peyton. Definitely more than 3 hours. Please sleep some more. Okay. So if you have 9 or more on this scale, it means you have significant sleep debt. And it's cumulative. And so what that'll end up doing is start impacting your behavior, start impacting your cognition, and start impacting your mental health. Okay? If you have 9 or more. Now, there are 3 levels in that 9 to 17, as you may be familiar with doing this scale previously. And so you want to make sure that you're getting that 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. And I'll talk about tips for a better sleep. I mean, that's more like review than anything in this case. So we'll talk about that at the end. David, what about people on meds that make them sleepy? Does the scale still work? Well, it's measuring sleep debt. So if it makes you sleepy, then you're likely going to get the sleep that you need. And so that kind of washes out, because not all questions are about how drowsy you are. That's a good point, though. It's a good point. It works in a way. It works in a way that you're part of the scale, or you're part of a not scale, the interval within the scale. So little chunks, and it's not obviously not perfect. It's not going to be 100% accurate all the time. So here we have your circadian rhythm. So if you're familiar with the circadian rhythm from, I don't know, maybe biology class, anatomy and physiology, some class that you may have taken in high school, this is based on a wake day, sleep night cycle. Okay, the way we evolved to, because we are diurnal animals. Okay, so we are awake during the day and asleep during the night, and there are a number of reasons why that's the case. I can, if I had time to jump into the evolutionary reasons, I would, but that's not this class. So this is from midnight to noon. What's actually happening? So this is it's in 24-hour time. So this is 6 a.m. and that's 6 p.m. 1800 hours, right? So at various points during the day in a 24-hour period, from midnight all the way back to midnight, you have each of these cases. Now, this rhythm is impacted by how much sleep you're getting, when you go to sleep, okay, the medication that you're taking, okay, your travel, and a whole host of other behaviors. That's not an exhaustive list. But so let's just take the average person who has an average life in an average world. Okay? Waking up. Okay? Waking up at 6. Okay? And so when you first wake up, that's when your blood pressure spikes, because you are becoming active. Okay, so it's changing your heart rate, which also then adjusts your 6 a.m. Yeah, 6 a.m. That's when you're supposed to wake up. Didn't you know? So about half an hour to 45 minutes after that, your brain stops secreting melatonin. After you eat breakfast, or maybe not eating breakfast, you will likely have a bowel movement in the morning, okay? which is why it's sometimes referred to as the morning constitution. Okay? Morning constitution. Okay, highest level of testosterone and other hormones are secreted in mid-morning. Okay. This actually kind of represents me a little bit because at 10 a.m. I am the most focused, I am the most alert, I get my stuff done. I mean, it helps that I have this, but that's not the same for everyone, right? There are night owls, right, where they're more alert over here, okay? Where they're more focused over here, and then they tend to go to bed later, which then shifts the rhythm all around, okay? You ever wonder why sports are in the afternoon? Well, that's when our body is most coordinated. Yeah, see? That's why you don't play sports in the morning. Sports in the morning. That sounds awful. Then, again, fastest reaction time goes with that, too. And then you have your highest blood pressure after a 12-hour period. Perhaps you've eaten the large meal before you start fasting while you sleep, right? That's why we call it breakfast. Break fast, right? And as you go to sleep, okay, I think this 2100 is a little too late on this rhythm. Melatonin secretion starts when the sunlight dips, okay? And so depending on where you are, 9 o'clock is really dark, okay? 9 o'clock is really dark. So I would say as soon as the sun starts to die and whatever sunset is, that's when melatonin secretion actually begins, and it just picks up when the sun is completely gone, okay? And then just before, just as you reach the point of around midnight to 2 a.m. is when you're in your deepest sleep. Of course, this is, again, an average person in an average life. We'll talk about deep sleep actually occurring earlier in the night, mostly, but it's a cycle. It goes up and down. Bowel movements are suppressed, right? Lowest body temperature. Your heart rate is down. Should be down below 70 beats per minute. And then you do it all over again. Yeah, good times, right? Again, individual differences are going to change this rhythm significantly. If you work a graveyard shift consistently, you will actually change your rhythm to flip, which isn't necessarily all that good for your biology, but it will occur. That's how one of these life changes, these behaviors, will impact your rhythm, because your rhythm is just that. You can change your rhythm, right? You can change a beat on a drum or guitar or whatever. You can change your own rhythm, okay? So let's talk about that sleep period here moving forward, right? This is the sleep lecture. If you have any questions about the circadian rhythm, go ahead and ask them in chat. I'll come back to that. All right, so here is a typical sleep graph, okay? So we have a period of 8 hours, and on the, so that's on the x-axis, and on the y-axis are the categorical stages of sleep and their associated brain waves, okay? And the reason why it looks all blocky like this is because you spend an amount of time plateauing in an area on one of those things, and you momentarily dip up or down. So that's why it looks blocky like this, right? So on this graph, I want to point out a couple of things. So we're going to talk about, there we go. We're going to talk about the 4 stages of NREM sleep, NREM, or non-REM sleep. And then up here you have REM, okay? You have REM. So these are, so S's, REM, NREM, S's and D's. The S's here represent sleep, as far as I'm aware. So just sleep. Or maybe steady or stupid. I don't know. I just like to consider it as sleep. The D, on the other hand, represents dreaming. Okay? Represents dreaming. And you can see you spend most of the early night, the first few hours, in deep sleep. Okay? And we'll talk about what occurs during deep sleep. And you spend the later part of your sleep cycle, okay? So the later part or the earlier part of the morning, depending on when you've gone to sleep, dreaming. Or more times in REM, and then you wake, okay? And you can see where REM here exists on this map. It's actually inaccurately in between at 1. It should actually be in between 1 and 2, or more specifically at 2. So it should be somewhere around here, to be fair, but that's fine. Braden, if someone is able to sleep longer than 8 hours per night, is that unhealthy? Heard this before and just curious. If you go above 9, so your good range is 7 to 9. If you go above 9 and you're consistently going above 9, yes, that is sleeping too much. That is sleeping too much because your body's not active as much during the day. Your body is in, save mode. And you end up with a situation where you are likely to gain more weight, not feel rested, and also have some counterintuitive mental health effects, negative mental health effects. So, yeah, that's only if it's consistently above 9 hours. So if you're sleeping 10, 12, 14 hours a night, not good. Okay, it's too much time asleep. Okay. But that's a good question, right? Because we always talk about sleep deprivation and not being sleep drunk, as it were. Okay. So let's talk about these stages very quickly. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. So substantial brain activity in stage 1, okay, but it's unsynchronized. If you've kind of felt yourself being drowsy, your eyes may be like going, listening back and forth, but most of the time they're still, and we will call this drowsy sleep, okay, and it's easy to wake people up. This is when people have muscle twitches. Raise your hand if you muscle twitch. Okay. You're very relaxed, but you do have an awareness of your surrounding, and it's easy to wake someone up. Just like that grandparent who was like, I wasn't sleeping. What are you talking about? Yeah. Yeah, Astrid's a twitcher too. We both twitch. Yeah. Oh man, my grandmother, she's famous for doing this in her chair at her home. And then when you'd say something to her, she'd be like, I'm awake. Yeah, right. Awake. Whatever. Liar. Yeah. Caitlin, you asked, what does it look like for someone with insomnia who has trouble staying asleep? Are you referring to the sleep stages? Because if you're referring to what the sleep cycle looks like, if we go back to this, if that's what you're referring to, then you're gonna have more time up here. You're gonna have more time up here, right? So not as much of either of these, NREM or REM. Okay, much shorter up here, because insomnia is just gonna shorten the amount of time that you are just actually asleep. Okay, and then various drugs will affect whether or not you can achieve stage 4 Other drugs will affect whether or not you can dream. So, you know, it really all depends. So let's move on to stage 2. Stage 2, heart rate slows. This is your body preparing to be immobile for a long time. Conserve energy, doesn't need a heart rate pumping really, really, really fast. If you've ever been sick, maybe you've had a fever, trying to sleep with a fever is really difficult. Kind of, you're uncomfortable. You're hot, but also cold at the same time. And your heart rate is elevated. Trying to go to sleep while you're feverish is really difficult. I know because I tried to like 5 nights ago, and I just tossed and turned, couldn't do it. Eventually had to, and I didn't actually have a fever. Stupid stomach bug. Your body temperature drops. Sort of go hand in hand. Your heart really is your blood is really the carrier of your body temperature, which is created from heat in digestion. So your blood's the one that's circulating your body temperature, and so if your heart rate slows, then your body temperature slows or drops. Excuse me. And so this is preparation for deep sleep. 2 aspects of your brainwave that are only found in this preparation stage are what are called K-complexes and sleep spindles. K-complexes are huge fluctuations in wavelengths, so large positive to large negative fluctuation in the same second or so. And then sleep spindles are rhythmic bursts. They're rapid. They're, again, about a second long. And so not a lot is known about K-complexes and sleep spindles, but just that they need to occur for us to then switch into stage 3 and 4, which for the most part are fairly connected. You see, you can hear. I told you're gonna be able to hear her. Ellie, I'm talking, baby. You gotta move along, okay? And she's gonna keep doing that. Great. So we'll call what, Ellie? I know you do, but I'm teaching class right now. Can you go keep watching Toy Story 3, please? Please don't try to move that. Whew. Yeah, never teach. Oh. Cool. All right. She left and then she came back. Great. Okay, so stage 3 and 4, deep sleep, sometimes referred to as delta wave sleep. You can see this is on the green graph here. The green wavelengths here, very large fluctuations of voltage. So voltage here is on the y-axis, and so each of these segments, each of these rectangular segments, is a second. Okay, so large fluctuations within a second. And so NREM 3 and NREM 4 are essentially the same. If you have a sleep tracking app, they might call this deep sleep. Okay. Waking alpha and waking beta, these are just 2 different brainwave patterns. 2 different brainwave patterns, Stephanie, for when you are awake. That's what the waking means. And then you can see here, REM looks a little bit like NREM 1. And a little bit like waking beta, maybe a little bit more fluctuating. And that'll come into play when we talk about REM here in just a second. Okay. Delta waves, yep. this is where your parasomnias incur. So in chat, if you want to share, if you have any parasomnias. So this is not an exhaustive list. There are other parasomnias. So parasomnias do not occur during dreaming. Do not occur during dreaming. You're actually not supposed to have any kind of movement or anything while you're dreaming. But that doesn't mean dreaming can occur during... I'm sorry, I meant to say REM, not dreaming. You can dream while you have a parasomnia. Okay. You're not supposed to be acting out your dreams, though, so that's the case. You're not supposed to be acting out REM when most dreaming occurs, though, and that's why you go into, paralysis, atonia. Okay. So, night terrors, not the same thing as nightmares, which are just bad dreams. Fancy way of saying, bad dreams. So night terrors are just like physical shrieking and crying, but the person doesn't know that they're actually doing any of that. Thrashing, that sort of thing. Both my kids, unfortunately, suffer from night terrors, it's just a real bummer because they don't really know that it's occurring to them. It happens quite a bit in kids. You tend to grow out of night terrors, which is nice. Then you've got somnambulism. So the S-O-M-N, the somn, is the Latin word for sleep. Okay. So that's why we can attach it to things like sleepwalking, sleep talking, that sort of thing. So somnambulism, sleepwalking. My sister is a somnambulist. Nocturnal enuresis, appropriate for my son's age. You eventually grow out of this. Some medication does, for adults, can have this as a side effect. Nocturnal enuresis. And then somniloquy. My favorite word in the English language. Somniloquy. Woo! Yeah, so good. It's so good. It's like a beautiful word. It's a beautiful word. All right, let's jump into REM here. So REM stands for rapid eye movement, of course. Okay. All you sleepwalkers and talkers in chat, I'll just get you into a room and then, I'll have a conversation at night. Bumping into each other. Sometimes referred to as paradoxical sleep. So your respiration and heart rate speed up. Brain activity increases. Brainwaves resemble wakefulness. Okay. But your pons in the brainstem shuts off all communication with the rest of the spinal cord. So you don't actually move. Okay. So the pons says, nope. Which is why most dreaming tends to occur during REM, because you can do these dreams, you can have these dreams thinking about all of these things. Not right now, baby. I'm sorry, you can't. And then we don't act them out, right? We don't, have a dream about fighting the bad guys and then we're, punching our partners in the face while they're asleep next to us. So it makes sure that we keep ourselves safe while our brain still is working with stuff, okay? When most dreaming occurs. So yeah. Questions about that, stages, let me know. But let's keep going through some of the more behavioral stuff. Yeah, Abby, if you have sleep apnea, which will interrupt your sleep cycle, due to, that being obviously a disorder of sleep. If you cannot get into REM, dreaming is crucial. Not a lot is known about the cognitive effects of not dreaming, but it's likely to have long-term cognitive effects. I doubt it will affect you in the short term, in the way that maybe sleep deprivation would, but if you're not allowed to dream, yeah, you're gonna have a bad time. But here's the real kicker. Your body knows when it hasn't been able to dream. Okay? Your body knows when it hasn't been able to dream. There was a sleep study that was done, I think 30 years ago, something like that, where they specifically did not allow participants to go into REM. So they allowed them to go to sleep, but when their brainwaves indicated that they were going to go to sleep or go into REM, they were woken up. So their bodies were not allowed to go into REM. They did this for a couple of days, trying to see what the effects were. Yeah, some reaction time issues. People were a little bit more groggy overall. But then the second part of the study was they were allowed to go into REM after they were woken up from not being able to go into REM, and they immediately went into REM. Like, the body knew exactly. Their bodies just immediately went into REM. Straight down to stage 3 or 4, right back up. Right back up to REM. So even if sleep apnea is impacting your ability to go into REM on a normal day-to-day basis, on a normal sleep cycle basis, if you haven't gotten that ability to go into REM recently, then you're going to go into REM pretty immediately. It's not going to look like a typical sleep cycle where you spend the early part of the night in deep sleep and the later part of the night in REM. It's going to be almost flipped. To get your body that REM it needs. REM, it does body good. Okay. All right. So sleep patterns. Sleep patterns are pretty interesting on a developmental basis. You may have talked about this in one of Dr. Kaiser's classes. Newborns sleep a lot, and usually in 1 to 3 hour segments. So I have a new niece. She is almost 2 months old. No, sorry. She's more than 2 months old. Yes, about... Yeah, something like that. Bad uncle. I haven't gotten to meet her yet, so... because they're in Salt Lake City. But she sleeps a bunch. She blessed my sister with... I want to say... like a huge stretch recently. So yeah, as newborns get older, they are going to decrease with age, obviously. Fast forward to adults. Oh yeah, so from a big sleep study recently, I think in the last decade, 6.0 hours of sleep on weekdays, 7.4 on weekends for North American adults. So I think this study was US and Canada. Yeah. US and Canada. Nice. Good job, Logan. It's always good to have kids that sleep at daycare. Woo! Ellie dropped her naps, but when she's started full days in January at her preschool, and she's actually been starting to take naps again. So yeah. Now, if you've got an adult who has different sleep needs than other ones, it's probably because of things even as simple as genes. Okay? Even as simple as genes. So, as an individual difference, the amount of sleep that I need may be different from the amount of sleep that you all need. Okay? Work schedule also plays a role into this. So if we throw in other social factors, work schedule, the internet also has a role to play in all of this. Over the past 25 years or so, more people spend time online. It's easier to do things online at any given hour, right? And as far as other social diversions, And the internet and other diversions like going out, dancing, going to clubs, going out and drinking, going to a casino, all these other sorts of things contribute to what is called social jet lag. Okay? Social jet lag. So the idea about jet lag, right, which is a physical thing of going from one time zone to another, multiple time zones. Not just saying, "Hey, I'm going to drive into deeper into Indiana. I'll be in Eastern time in just a second." No, and I'm not talking about just one time zone to the next. I'm talking about multiple time zones. That jet lag concept, right? So all of these social things can make us sleepier or net us less sleep during the week and or weekends. Even though this number is a good half an hour more sleep than during the weekday, this is incredibly more variable. The standard deviation on this value is quite higher than this value. For all of you stats nerds there. Okay. Other things that impact sleep among adults as well as children, I know I go from newborns to adults, are things like socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, what your workplace is like. So if it's a positive workplace, negative workplace, toxic, etc. What your neighborhood is, among other social factors, who your friends are, who your family are, that sort of thing. Okay. All right, sleep disorders, very quickly. Sleep debt, we just talked about this. Sleep debt is a predictor of depression. Okay. Yes, Katie, yeah, it's 11.5 hours on social media. Yeah, that's probably impacting and changing that to 6 point something? Okay. So this is sleep debt. Biggest connection here is depression that I want to make. And then, of course, slower reaction times and increased errors. Okay. It cannot be repaid on one long sleep. Let me go back to that. It cannot be repaid on just one long sleep session. You can't just go, well, I've slept 6 hours now over the last 3 nights, so I'm going to sleep 12 to make up for it. It doesn't work like that. You can't. It's not actually a bank in that way. I have a sleep tracking app that treats it like that, and I really dislike it. I really dislike that aspect of it because it treats it like it is an inverse, and it's really not. There's no such thing as sleep credit. You don't get sleep credit. Okay? You only get sleep debt. But such the way is life, right? Poor sleep. So, this is not really a name disorder per se. It's just bad sleep habits that kind of coalesce. Okay. Insomnia. Okay. 1 out of 3 adults suffer from insomnia at some point in their lives or on an ongoing basis, and 10 to 15% have clinical insomnia. Healthy people 2020. Hey, it's 2020. I wonder if there'll be a Healthy People 2030. I'm sure there will be. These are our national health goals, and Americans are not reaching this. So I wonder how this, if Healthy People 2030 is going to be amended or refocused to make sure that teens and especially young adults are getting the sleep that they need. Okay, by the time you're an older individual, 6 to 7 hours of sleep is actually all you need. If you're more active, then maybe a little bit more. So there's the kicker there with activity levels. Other sleep-wake disorders are narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a sleep attack. Okay? Sleep attack. Okay? Generally speaking, there might be a trigger gene for this. in the hippocampus that causes, or I should say, in the, sorry, not the hippocampus, the hypothalamus that says, hey, I'm not going to produce as much hypocretin as you think you need. And so that leads to sleep attacks during the day. Narcolepsy can also be, or lead to abnormal REM cycles. And then sleep apnea. Abby mentioned sleep apnea a little bit earlier. So if you're not familiar with sleep apnea it is temporary cessation of breathing during sleep. So a person stops breathing during their sleep. Excuse me. It has a greater risk if your body weight is higher. And the most common is called obstructive sleep apnea. So something covers the airway momentarily. And this can be fixed by a CPAP machine. CPAP, C-P-A-P, which increases the amount of oxygen flow. It's you gotta wear the mask over your face, all that sort of thing. Yeah. And it's pretty involved. All right. And as I mentioned with sleep disorders, anxiety, depression, and other cognitive changes with these, a lot of people with insomnia have comorbidity with anxiety and depression keeping them awake. Okay. I know it's past 11:50, so if you have to run, that's okay. I'm gonna finish these slides. There are only a few more. I do want to play the sleep paralysis video though, because I think it's actually really cool. Sleep paralysis. I think some of you have indicated that you have sleep paralysis, which is when you wake up and you're still locked, still locked in paralysis. There's a cousin disorder with sleep paralysis, which is the opposite, which is REM behavior disorder, where the pons doesn't turn off, and you start acting out your dreams. So sleep paralysis, pons stays on even though you are waking. And then REM behavior disorder is when the pons turns off and you're like, oh, I'm fighting all of these bad guys. Bang, boom, boosh, 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 ah! You know, that sort of thing. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you. And then we'll finish these slides. And then I will put this video on the YouTubes. So if you need to run out,
so sleep paralysis.
See you on Friday.
It's actually very common. Many people
And
have
you can
it.
watch
I've
the
had it myself. And what happens is when you're
Yub Tubs later.
Your brain is very active. You're dreaming the most during that stage. Your mind, your eyes are moving. There's a lot that's going on. It's like fireworks going on in your brain. Now, what happens in the rest of your body, and this is an evolutionary function, is that your body has muscle atonia, meaning your muscles are basically turned off. They can't work. So your brain is active, your muscles can't work.
All right.
Now, for what happens in sleep paralysis is that some patients, and we'll notice this early in the morning because you're having more REM sleep then, will wake up in the middle of REM sleep. So I know myself, I woke up once in the middle of REM sleep and I couldn't move my muscles. And it was very scary. And it's scary for anyone who has it because your mind is very active, your eyes are active, but nothing else is moving. So you have to give yourself a little while. You'll come out of the REM state, your muscles awaken, and it's fine. It's a totally normal thing to have.
Oop, it paused there for a sec.
Now, it can be indicative sometimes of other sleep disorders. So we'll see a lot in narcolepsy. So some patients will report that they have sleep paralysis. If we see sleep paralysis alone and nothing else, we don't really think all that much of it. But if we see other symptoms, then it might be a red flag for something else that's going on. So in REM behavior disorder, RBD, it's a newer diagnosis. I'd say probably about the past 10 to 15 years, we're really recognizing it more and more. Patients will come to our practice and they'll say, I'm waking up in the morning and I have bruises on my arms, my fists are bloody, or they'll say, my house was a mess, I found things all over the place. Generally, that can be sleepwalking, but sleepwalking tends to not be as violent, and that's earlier in the night when you're in the deeper stages of sleep. In RBD, it tends to be a bit more violent.
REM behavior disorder.
So when you're in REM sleep, your muscles are supposed to have atonia and no function for them. But for some patients, their muscles don't turn off. So if they're having a nightmare or a very vivid dream, they'll actually act out essentially their dream in their sleep during REM sleep. So that's why we'll see patients come in with bruises, their bed's a mess, they might fall out of bed, things like that. So it can be, for some patients, a very violent problem that we actually need to treat aggressively. Yeah, there are some that are REM behavior disorder. We'll see
for you criminal
documented cases, and they really
justice
need to have
folks.
A thorough evaluation with a sleep specialist. You can't just say, "Oh, it was while I was sleeping." There's confusional arousal, so there are states in deeper sleep that can happen where people will go and they'll disappear, or they'll take on some other persona, or commit some crime, but it's all when they're in a very deep stage of sleep. So you really need to have a very thorough evaluation. But yes, there's a line of work of people who work with people who've been charged for crimes, and will actually do sleep disorder analyses with them.
Thanks, Big Think. All right. So that's pretty fascinating, right? REM behavior disorder and sleep paralysis. I like the two cousins of each other. So why do we sleep? Well, we are actually fairly weak animals. We kind of suck. So one way that we evolved to sleep, mammals and diurnal mammals in general, is that we use it to protect ourselves. We don't move when we sleep, and so we have a better chance of surviving the night when many other predators are around to eat us. Okay? There's evidence that we use sleep to recuperate from the day, whatever damage we've done to our body. Regardless of how small the damage has been done, we use that to recuperate. We restore and rebuild our memories. This process is called consolidation. What we learn, the information that we acquire in a given day in between sleep cycles, can be consolidated and used more efficiently upon retrieval. Like it's just better. Right, feeds creative thinking. There's line of creativity research that suggests that sleep is related to more creativity. Okay, unlocking those parts of our cognition. And then when you are growing, that's when a lot of your body's energy is directed toward growing bones, growing muscles, right? We don't need the energy to move or speak or to see or anything like that. And so we use that time to grow. Eventually, these processes, even though we sleep, these processes do tend to end, right? You don't keep growing bigger and bigger and bigger unless you have some sort of hormonal or endocrine disorder. So the growth function of sleep, it does have a time limit for most things. Now, the effects of chronic sleep loss or sleep deprivation, just catch-all terms, sleep deprivation. So these are the catch-all terms, catch-all effects here. So increased body weight, body mass index, and obesity, higher percentage of adipose tissue or body fat, okay, the stuff that collects on the outside of our torsos and other places. Increased ghrelin, which increases our hunger, and decreased leptin, which decreases our hunger. So increased ghrelin makes us hungrier. Decreased leptin doesn't say that we are full as often. Elevated levels of cortisol, of course, right? Because not getting enough sleep is technically a long-term stressor. And we talked about in this class that long-term stressor and cortisol go hand in hand. the more cortisol you have, the badder off you are, right? The worse off you are. So, and then if you have more cortisol, you have decreased immune functioning and chronic inflammation, because that's what cortisol does, right? Insulin resistance increases with chronic sleep loss. Okay, so your body is not as easily able to control your sugar levels. Metabolic disease promotion. So when we talk about nutrition or exercise this week or next week, I can't remember when we're talking about this, we'll go into cardiometabolic disease. We'll talk about that in more detail. And then, of course, the cognitive effects of worse concentration, worse memory, and specifically like memory retrieval, as well as memory encoding. And then reduced creativity, right? Okay, so the National Sleep Foundation in 2015 came up with a few sleep tips. So if you are still around, just make sure you're going to bed at the same time and rising at the same time, having consistency, okay? Establish consistent, relaxing routines. Sleep in a good environment, right? If it's loud and bright, then you're not going to be able to sleep well. Get rid of the electronics and technology from your bedroom. The only electronics that I have in my bedroom are our phones, and that's because, just in case, having our phones near us, emergencies, that sort of thing. But we don't have a TV in there. Some of you can't, we don't bring our computers in there either. Some of you can't do that because of your dorm or room situation, but just keep that in mind. Making your bed comfortable. If you have a really old mattress, consider getting a new mattress. About 8 years or so, depending on what kind of mattress you have. If it's a normal spring mattress, then yeah, every 8 years or so, especially if it's sagging where your body goes, maybe flip it around, I don't know. And it's used exclusively for sleeping, but also the other S word. Okay, the snorkeling. Don't forget to snorkel in your bed. Avoiding large meals. That all really depends how close you eat the large meal to bedtime. Don't eat it right before. Avoiding caffeine. Yeah, of course, avoiding caffeine, but that's not going to be in that. Realistically, National Sleep Foundation. Alcohol is going to impact sleep for sure. Exercising regularly. And hey, use a sleep diary when you can, or a sleep tracker. And many sleep trackers come with diaries. The Auto Sleep, the app that I talked about earlier, it's like $3 on the iPhone App Store. So if you have an Apple Watch, you can get that, and it's both a tracker and a diary. Also, diaries help with recording dreams. If you want to record your dreams, you can write that down immediately. So that's the sleep part of our material here. If you have any questions, again, email me, message me, ask them on Brightspace, whatever, even wherever you'd like to, wherever messages are sold. And until then, I will see some of you later. More health psychology on Friday, same time, same place. Bye.